Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. You know him, you love him, you hate him. He's the celebrity to all the stars. That is the lawyer to all the stars. You're a celebrity lawyer. David Lane, who has a distinguished list of really questionable clients, including me. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me, John.
You've got the weirdest list. Now, you've represented me and Ward Churchill and Balloon Boy's father, Daddy, and Doug Bruce.
Right.
You pretty much pissed off everybody.
Absolutely.
You like this?
I do. I've represented Nazis, I've represented Klansmen, I've represented communists, I've represented atheists, I've represented fundamentalists of all stripes and persuasions. I have actually been the devil's advocate, representing a Satan worshiper.
So in other words, the old joke that instead of using rats, they have to use lawyers because there's some things that rats just won't do, that applies.
Well, it depends on your perspective, okay? I mean, the common denominator among every one of those lunatics, including yourself, is they were all on the receiving end of mistreatment by the government in terms of their constitutional rights. And my attitude is that I don't care if you're Jon Caldara, I'll even stoop that low. I will represent communists, Nazis, etc., Satan worshipers, if the government is violating their constitutional rights.
Even free market conservatives.
Absolutely.
That is good pity from your point. You wrote an article in the Denver Post talking about the need to get rid of the death penalty. You argued that James Holmes, the alleged killer, doesn't deserve the death penalty, and that's a hot topic here. I really wanted to explore that. And before that, give me a little bit of your background. You have spent a lot of time defending death row inmates and trying to keep them from being killed.
Absolutely.
Why?
Well, I mean, why does anybody do what they end up doing? I mean, you know, why do fools fall in love? It's genetics, it's your culture, it's your background, it's your upbringing. I don't know the reason for why. All I can tell you is I've been a lawyer for 32 years. I went to CU as an undergrad, much to their dismay when I was representing Ward Churchill. And Berkeley Law School. I got out of Berkeley Law School. I went to work in the public defender's office in New York City for 7 years, moved back to Colorado, set up my own practice. I've been doing death penalty defense since 1984. And as I said earlier, every single client of mine that you ran the laundry list of was being screwed by the government. And to me, I learned lessons from my uncle on my mother's side of the family. My mother's brother-in-law escaped from Nazi Germany as a Jew when he was a kid with a shirt on his back, and his mom, his dad died in the camps. And he used to sit us down and tell us stories about, you know, fleeing Nazi Germany from government oppression. And he used to look at me and he'd say, don't ever think for 1 minute, it could not happen here. It could happen here.
But let's bring it back to some of these clients. I'm assuming the clients you've had on death row, they, for the most part, are guilty of the crimes which they've been charged with, and you know that.
Sure.
So you've been defending some real scuzzballs. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that.
These are people who deserve punishment. Would you agree with that?
It's an interesting choice of words. Deserve punishment. The concept of deserving it needs to be explored. All right. The concept of what you deserve means what you give out is what you should get back. I've never had a client give out a lethal injection to anyone. My clients rape, they maim, they mutilate, they sexually torture people, and then they slowly kill them. All right? So what do they deserve? What they deserve is what they gave out. And the issue then becomes, well, should they be turned over to the victims' families on Tuesday at noon, front steps of the state capitol building? The victims' families can bring kitchen and garden implements with them. They can do whatever they want for as long as they want. Doctors will be standing by to revive these guys. And finally, you know, when they're exhausted, other passersby can enter a lottery, you know, a moneymaker for the state, take their shots. Okay? Why are we not in favor of that? Because that's essentially what my clients give out to people. And the answer is it's not about what they deserve. The question is never what do they deserve, because the darkest circles of hell are reserved for my clients, and that's what they deserve. The issue is, what does it say about you if you go stooping to that level. It says as much about you as it does
challenge
them.
that. Can we agree that a system of law requires that people who commit those type of atrocities be brought to justice, if for no other reason, to be taken out of the general public so that our streets are safer?
Two important concepts you've just raised, okay? First of all, safety. Everybody in this society is entitled to safety. I fully agree with that. No one can argue with that. Justice is an interesting question, and I raise this issue with law students all the time when I lecture law students. You are even criminal justice majors. You're a criminal justice major. What is justice? You know, when George W. Bush says we're going to bring Osama bin Laden to justice, nobody envisioned a trial in New York City for Osama bin Laden with a jury of his peers and evidence being admitted. That meant we're going to put a bullet between his eyes. That's what justice meant. This country has hopelessly intertwined and entangled the concepts of justice with vengeance. They are not synonyms. Vengeance may be a component of justice, but it's not the only part of justice. The other aspect of justice requires due process of law. It requires fundamental fairness. It requires respect for the basic essential humanity of the perpetrator of any act. Their basic humanity has got to be respected, along with vengeance if they're convicted.
All right, let's play this. One of your clients, you would agree, needs to be taken off the street.
Absolutely.
All right. Would you also believe that after due process, when he is convicted of his crime, that he be sentenced under the law?
Sure.
All right. Where you disagree is if that sentence goes to the point of death.
Right.
Would that be all right? So there is a tripwire for you.
Yes, I mean,
if this guy is put away for the rest of his life, you're okay with that, assuming he's guilty of the heinous crime we're imagining. But when the jury comes back and the due process says not only that, but he should be put to death, that's the tripwire for you.
For me.
All right.
Everybody has their lines. I mean, every single person that joins this debate has a line. And for me, the world is an extremely dangerous place because death is always on the table. If you do something bad enough, as far as I'm concerned, as a politician on an international level, if your country does something bad, we will kill you. We will send our armies out and we will kill you.
I tell you,
it's a mentality.
We can get back to it. Let's take the military aspect away. Let's talk about it inside domestic crime. And let me ask you about the term or the idea of restitution. In that if somebody steals something from me, not only do we have a system of laws to ensure that he be punished for that crime, for that injustice to me, but that there's some type of restitution. If he stole $1,000 for me, well, part of that is that he's going to pay me back my $1,000, and then I hope that there's something to punish him for a couple reasons. One, I think he deserves it, and also that there's a deterrent. That other people know, hey, I'm not going to steal something because I'm just going to have to pay it back, and I'm going to spend time in jail. When someone takes another's life, what is the restitution? Well, that is, let me go on for a second. What is the restitution? If you take my loved one, you take my daughter, or you take my son, or you take my father, and what is it that could possibly bring there's no amount of money that's going to do that. What is wrong with the concept that the closest thing we're going to have to restitution is that the same thing will happen to you as you did to me? Well, that is, you lose your life because I lost my loved one.
The inherent in your argument is the seeds of its own destruction. Meaning, if I steal $1,000 from you, I am required to give you $1,000. You have been made whole. That is restitution. If I steal your loved one's life, and I've told this to juries when I've done closing arguments in death penalty cases, there is no restitution that is possible. There is nothing that can right the scales. Your loved one is always gone forever and ever and ever. Killing this person, I hearken back to what I saw when I was at San Quentin. I was representing a guy on California's death row. I was visiting with him in a visitation area. Another inmate sentenced to die had his daughter there, a 7-year-old daughter, and his mother. They were all visiting. Little girl hugged her daddy, kissed him, was happy to see him. Daddy was sentenced to die for whatever. And we were leaving, and they were expecting an execution that week. The door to the gas chamber was wide open, and everybody in the visitation area had to leave. There were 2 convicts inside painting the gas chamber. And this little girl stopped and said, "Grandma, is that the gas chamber?" Grandma broke down crying and said, "Come on, let's go." And I thought, you know, explain to this little 7-year-old girl whose dad is about to be executed why the state of California or the state of Colorado or any governmental entity has the right to do that. The pain she suffers is every bit as real. And you can pass it off and say, that's his fault. He made her a victim too. But we can stop that pain. We have the ability as a society to stop that pain.
You asked to those jurors, what is the restitution? This doesn't bring you restitution.
It doesn't.
But to that victim's family, if that victim's family says yes, that helps bring a measure of restitution. I admit it's not going to bring my loved one back, but it will bring me a peace of mind. It will bring me a certain satisfaction. It will bring a certain, it'll bring a certain closure to the loss that was committed to me, to the grievous crime. And therefore, this is the closest he can come to restitution. Why is that an immoral argument?
Well, having spoken to victims' families for years, for decades, having done this, it is a false hope. All right, I have seen it over and over again where victims' families go to an execution, they watch the most hated person on earth die, and they walk out and they say, my loved one is not here. This is not closure.
And I've talked to people who've done the opposite. Former Senator Ken Klobuchar lost his mother in a terrible rape and murder. Took years. He watched the criminal die. And he told me it brought me a sense of closure that I needed.
You're right.
It was right. So, I mean, you can't make
a blanket statement.
You just made a blanket statement.
No, I'm saying, you know, for that side of the coin, there are a vastly larger number of people on the other side of the coin. That's what I'm saying. Plus, we don't drive social policy based on individual desires and needs. When you want a watch, but you don't have the money for it, you may want to just take it, but you don't. There are a lot of things that we do in society that we restrain ourselves because that's what ordered society is based on.
To put it into the simplest terms, in the simplest terms, why is this not the punishment that fits the crime? I mean, that's
because, first of all, let's get into the practical realities of it. First of all, talk to the approximately 150 people who were on death row after fair trials, after juries of their peers convicted them and sentenced them to death, that were later exonerated and were taken off death row. Except guys like Todd Willingham down in Texas, who are dead and buried, having conclusively shown that they were innocent of the crime that they were executed for. You know, tell them about restitution and how good they should feel that they're soldiers in the sacrifice for a feel-good moment that we get to kill a killer.
All right, and those are wonderful examples, but that isn't the whole story. There are people who have been convicted, who you know are guilty, who have admitted their guilt.
Of course.
And what is wrong? Why is that not the punishment that fits what they did?
Because you lose your own humanity when you do that. Are you in favor of torturing these guys? You know, Ken Klobuchar's mother got raped and horribly, brutally murdered. Are you in favor of doing that to the perpetrator? That's what he deserves. That's what he did to her. Would you do that as a member of society? Jon Caldara, you are the executioner.
If it was someone I love, absolutely, without a doubt.
But I tell you, get cut off in traffic, you probably want to ram the guy in front of you. Yes, you do. Everybody does, John. Everybody, you restrain yourself. The issue is, as a societal policy matter,
what is the restitution? But if that's the restitution, if that's what's going to bring, if that's what the victim's family wants, if that's what the victim's family really wants,
you know,
why not?
Because just because they are the victim's family does not mean that social policy is formed by what a victim's family wants. They may want all kinds of things. They may want him tortured to death, just like I've described with kitchen and garden implements. Are we going to do it? Would you be in favor of it? Just answer this question.
No, I wouldn't be in favor.
Why would you not be in favor of that?
Because
if that's what this guy did?
We have a constitutional amendment against cruel and unusual punishment.
John.
And you know what? I agree with that. But to take him out of the gene pool is not the same.
He's not reproducing, John. He's out of the gene pool. But the point I'm making is, no, you've just hit it on the head. You would not be in favor of torturing the guy to death, even though that's what he deserves, even though that's what he gave out. And the reason for that is, forget the 8th Amendment, forget the Constitution. You're not in favor of it because you would not stoop that low to do that. Because if you did stoop that low...
You know me better than that. You know how low I can stoop.
You can stoop very low, but I've seen it.
Let's bring it to this, though. We have a system, unlike others around the world. You go to Saudi Arabia, fine, he will be tortured. He will be put to death pretty quickly. We have, even with those anomalies, a system that gives incredible amounts of due process.
Well, let me ask you about the U.S. Supreme Court decision that says if you're black and you kill a white man, you are more than 4 times as likely to get the death penalty as with any other racial combination. Yes, we have due process, and yes, due process is not perfect, and yes, racism exists in our system. A Colorado prosecutor was seeking the death penalty on Anthony Lucero and Anthony Borrego in the late 1980s. He referred to them as chili-eating bastards, and he got a little slap on the wrist from the Colorado Supreme Court for that. I mean, it is a racist system. I've seen it over and over and over again, that if you are black or Hispanic and you kill a white person...
Can you make a couple concessions there? Just a couple concessions. Would you concede that the manner of execution and the due process is made to be as favorable for the defendant as possible? That is, we don't... a lethal injection is not the same as torturing somebody.
Right.
That in this society we have tried to find the most gentle way, the most humane way.
To keep our hands as clean as they can possibly stay. That's the reason, not because of love for the defendant.
And also to make sure that the defendant is not suffering.
Which is my point, John. I mean, the point is, if we were to come out of these things with our hands filled with blood and veins in our teeth, as Arlo Guthrie used to sing about, it's a reflection on us. So we want as sanitary as possible for us. We don't want to look like barbarian, bloodthirsty psychopaths.
Is there any crime that you can imagine that would deserve the death penalty?
Well, deserve, like I said, you deserve.
That you would desire the death penalty?
None.
There's
no crime. Hitler should not have received a death penalty. What's very interesting is you look at historically, you know, Obama ordered the execution of bin Laden. They had him. I don't believe for 1 minute that he made a move for a rifle and they had to shoot him twice in the head. Sorry, that was an execution team that went in to kill Osama bin Laden. Compare and contrast to the Israelis who in the 1960s knew where Adolf Eichmann was. Eichmann, the architect of the final solution to the Jews. They knew where he was hiding in Argentina. They had an option. They said, we can send in a hit team and leave his body in a ditch and get out easily, or we can kidnap him from Argentina at great risk to the Mossad agents who went into Argentina to do this, smuggle him out, and give him an allegedly fair trial in Jerusalem. They opted for the latter because they are not about going in and assassinating people. They wanted the world to see that he could get his opportunity to tell his side of the story. Even though it was a stacked deck, it was a foregone conclusion he's going to get executed.
What difference does it make?
He had the ability to have due process.
So
in China, they execute
in
more people than anywhere.
Right.
And in China, hang on.
No, you're a lawyer. You talk too long.
No,
and I'm a talk show host. I understand
you talk too long.
You're comparing this was a stacked court. This was a kangaroo court, bringing in a war criminal that you knew was going to be executed. And you're saying that's a better thing?
Yes, it's a better thing.
To have a kangaroo court?
Well, I mean, that's my opinion. It was a kangaroo court. If you ask the Israelis, they'll say, no, he got a fair trial. You know.
All right, so even war criminals shouldn't be killed.
Right.
What about when we try to bomb their headquarters? We know that the Axis headquarters are right there. We know that Hitler's there with his minions. One good bomb could take them all out and win the war. And David Lane's going to say, you can't do that.
Well, John, I believe in self-defense. If somebody attacks me and I need to kill them to save my life or to prevent myself from suffering serious bodily injury or death, I'll do it. I'll kill them. I believe in self-defense. I believe society has a right to be safe. I believe when we're at war, people die. It's an interesting issue. Also, it's tangential to what we're talking about, but, you know, Ward Churchill got in deep trouble for writing an essay about the 9/11 attacks. And part of his premise was, when you're making war on America, Bombing the Pentagon is a perfectly legitimate military target. Why is anybody upset that people at war with America are bombing the military headquarters of this country? The World Trade Towers are the heart and soul of the economic heartbeat of American economic imperialism. It's a perfectly legitimate target militarily. CIA had offices in the World Trade Towers. I mean, so it's an act of terrorism, but when we firebomb Dresden, Germany in World War II, and we kill untold tens of thousands of civilians, when we drop an atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing hundreds of thousands of civilians.
To quickly end the war.
There are always reasons,
You'd make a wonderful general.
There are always reasons.
Are you a conscientious objector?
I was, yes. During the Vietnam War, I told the draft board, I'm a conscientious objector. They said, no, you're not. I said, well, we'll just see about that, won't we? So.
And what happened?
They denied my conscientious objector status, and my draft number never got drafted. But it would have been an interesting, issue. Do I go to Canada or do I go to prison?
And what would you have done?
I don't know. I was 18 years old, and I don't know what I would have done.
In other countries, you would have gone to Canada or be shot.
Right.
Right.
This is the greatest country on earth for many reasons, including the Bill of Rights.
All right. Let's bring it back to domestic policy. I know you don't want to fight a war, so even you'd have the Nazis coming up the shore, and you still would.
I don't say that.
What would it have taken you to enlist?
In World War II?
Yeah. Would you have?
I think there are just wars.
Was that a just war?
I didn't think the Vietnam War was a just war.
I didn't ask you that.
Do I think that World War II was a just war? Yeah, I'd say it was a just war.
What makes the difference?
Between a just war and an unjust war?
Yeah.
I think the Vietnam War was unjust because it was basically designed to enrich corporate America. I think all the munitions makers and weapons manufacturers were getting rich off
they did in the Civil War as well.
Absolutely.
And they did in World War II as well.
Right, they did. But I don't think there was any other justification for the war in Vietnam.
Somebody could go forward and say, what we're doing is stopping
Plus,
Soviet
the U.S. got
aggression.
Attacked in World War II. The Japanese bombed the U.S. I mean, come on.
Let's go back to this. We've got about 4 minutes left.
Okay.
So let's wrap it up and put it into a ball. I understand both sides of this issue, and I got to tell you, it is compelling on both sides. I understand that a government that takes life itself is running into all sorts of moral imperatives, all sorts of risks that, and I think you explained them well, but I also see the other side of victims. And let's dispose of a couple of these quickly. Are you telling me that the death penalty has no deterrent effect? No
deterrent effect. I've represented hundreds of people charged with murder over 32 years. Not one of them thought they were going to get caught, much less thought about what's going to happen if I do get caught. What's the punishment going to be?
All right, one more then. Mentally ill. I understand that a fair amount of these people we can say are completely off the rocker, that they are sick. It is a disability they have, and therefore they shouldn't be killed. I'm assuming that's something that, another one of your arguments.
Sure.
All right. But there are some people who admit it, who
cold-blooded, smart, not mentally ill, worst case, contract killer, guy wants his family rubbed out for the insurance money, hires a hitman to go kill his wife and 3 kids, boom, 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 he does it. Not mentally ill, allegedly, smart, had a great upbringing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the guy you're talking about.
Do you think it's
guilty as hell?
Do you think it is a worse punishment, a more difficult punishment to spend your life behind bars?
I tell my clients, that's why they put bed sheets in your cell. If you think it's a worse punishment, you have the option at any time to take yourself out. I have had people take me up on that, who agreed that, yeah, it's a worse punishment spending my entire life locked in a little room. But that's not what the law says. All right, the death penalty serves no societal function. This justice system that we operate in, for every O.J. Simpson that you point me to, I'll show you 3 guys who were wrongly executed. I'll show you, scores of people who are wrongly convicted. I will tell you that the system operates at a level of beyond a reasonable doubt, not beyond all doubt, not beyond a shadow of a doubt. All it takes to get sent to death row is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. 150 people have been taken off death row. This state, since 1967, has executed 1 person. We have spent literally over $100 million since 1967 on the death penalty, trying to kill people. This is the most failed government program that I've ever heard of that costs more money to do nothing than any other government program I've ever conceived of. You talk about Obamacare, let's talk about the death penalty being a rat hole that money gets poured down.
Obamacare is going to cause more deaths in generations to come than any death
event,
penalty. Got 2 minutes. Make the sales job. All right, I understand the point of view, and I'm not saying I disagree with everything you've said. I still have a problem that I want what I perceive to be restitution.
Right.
So make the sales job for those of us willing to listen and consider.
Sure.
You know, what is
the
the sales job?
Is you'll never get restitution. Therefore, the issue is, what are we entitled to? We're entitled to safety. We have to be made safe from these people. We can easily do that without killing them. We do it every single day in prisons all over the country.
And if I find 20 people that say, yes, they killed the killer of my loved one, I felt that was restitution. That doesn't matter to you?
No, it doesn't. From a societal perspective, we don't function as a society to make victims of crime feel good. That's not our task.
Maybe if you get robbed at gunpoint,
well, maybe if you get robbed at gunpoint, you want somebody to do life in prison, and you only get 10 years. Sorry, we're not changing government policy to make you happy as a victim.
How do you make that family whole?
You can't. You can't make them whole. There is nothing. Jared Loughner is the best case that I'm talking about. He got a life sentence for shooting Giffords and everybody else. It's over for the victims. They can go about their lives knowing he's never getting out of prison ever for the rest of his life. They put their lives together. Their closure does not depend upon what happens to the perpetrator. And once they realize that, they'll realize that's a phony argument.
People want to get hold of you. People want to talk about it. Is there some place? Is there some place you go? Is there one organization that you really
I hang out at the Rialto Bar on the 16th Street Mall frequently with my law partners.
We'll send the criminals there. David, thank you. Thank you. Listen for me late nights on KHOW Radio. Tell a friend. We'll see you next week.